My name is Madison, I'm 23, and I work the night shift at a McDonald's off the highway in a small Midwestern town. I've gotten used to the loneliness of those hours. The empty dining room, the buzzing of the fluorescent lights, the way the fryer smell sticks to your hair even after a shower. Most nights nothing happens. But on June 11th, during one of the worst summer storms I can remember, something happened that I still can't explain. From the moment my shift started, the rain never stopped. It wasn't just drizzle. It came down in solid sheets, pounding the roof so loud we had to raise our voices to hear each other. The wind screamed through the parking lot, rattling the drive-thru menu board, and the power flickered every 10 to 15 minutes. We joked nervously that we were one gust away from sitting in the dark with a pile of raw burgers. There were only 4 of us working that night: me, my friend Elena, a kid named Gabriel, and another coworker, Anthony. We were bored and restless, so around 11 we made a bet. Would anyone actually drive through in weather this bad? Elena and I swore nobody would. Gabriel and Anthony were convinced at least one car would come, desperate for fries at midnight. Losers had to buy breakfast for the winners. It was stupid, but it gave us something to laugh about while the hours dragged. By 11:50, the store felt like a ghost town. The dining room was spotless, the fryers hissed softly, and the clock seemed frozen. I was stationed at the drive-thru headset, staring out the rain-smeared window at the black, deserted lot. My eyelids felt heavy, and all I could think about was curling up under my blanket at home. Then, at 11:58, the headset crackled. For a second I thought I imagined it, just static from the storm. But Gabriel grinned, pumping his fist. "Told you! Customer!" I slipped the headset on, instantly shifting into autopilot mode. "Welcome to McDonald's. Go ahead whenever you're ready." Nothing. At first it seemed like silence, but then I realized it wasn't silence at all. There was a sound on the line. A slow, ragged, distorted breathing. It didn't sound like a normal person. It was wet, heavy, strained, as if whoever was out there had their mouth right up against the speaker. The hairs on the back of my neck lifted. I swallowed hard and tried again. "Can I take your order?" Still nothing. Just that awful breathing. I glanced at Elena, who tilted her head, trying to listen. Gabriel laughed nervously. "Creepy, but hey, it counts. That's a customer." But my gut twisted. This didn't feel like a prank call. It felt like something watching me. I told myself it had to be Anthony messing with us. But a second later he walked out of the restroom, drying his hands on his apron. He was completely dry. No way he'd been outside in the downpour. Before I could process that, the headset erupted again. The same breathing, harsher this time. Like whoever it was had moved closer to the microphone. I flinched and almost dropped the headset. My hands were shaking. Anthony noticed and tugged the earpiece from me, pressing it to his own head. I'll never forget the look on his face. He wasn't the joking, easygoing coworker anymore. He went pale, his jaw tight. Without a word, he slid open the drive-thru window. Rain blew in instantly, soaking the counter. He leaned out, squinting through the storm toward the ordering box. There was nothing. The menu board stood alone under the flickering light. No car. No figure. No movement at all except the rain whipping sideways. But the headset still hissed with breathing. Anthony cursed and yanked the windows shut, water dripping from his sleeves. Elena's voice cracked as she asked what was going on. Gabriel, suddenly not so cocky, kept insisting it had to be a glitch in the system. The breathing cut off. Dead silence. We all froze, listening to the storm batter the building. My pulse pounded in my ears. I couldn't stop picturing someone, or something, standing inches from the intercom, unseen, pressing its face to the drive-thru speaker mic just to let us hear it breathe. The rest of the shift dragged on like a nightmare you can't wake from. Every time the radio crackled with static from the storm, I jumped. Every shadow outside looked like a figure. I avoided looking directly at the window, terrified I'd catch a reflection that wasn't supposed to be there. Elena tried to keep working like nothing had happened, but her hands trembled when she refilled the fryer baskets. Gabriel muttered to himself about technical errors, though his voice shook. Anthony stayed quiet, wiping down counters with the same rag for an hour straight, like he didn't trust himself to speak. The drive-thru speaker never came alive again. At 5 a.m., when we finally clocked out, Gabriel and Anthony reluctantly handed us the money for the bet. Elena and I won by default. We spent it on breakfast sandwiches, but I could barely eat. My stomach was still knotted, my head buzzing with that distorted sound. It's been months since that night, but storms still put me on edge. When the lights flicker, when the wind shakes the windows, when the headset crackles, I tense up, waiting to hear that breathing again. Because I know what static sounds like. I know what wind sounds like. And what came through that speaker wasn't either of those things. It was someone. Someone who shouldn't have been there. And the question that keeps me awake, long after the restaurant has gone dark, is the one none of us could answer. If there was no one in the parking lot that night, then who, or what, was on the other end of the line? My name is Evan, and the first time I heard the laughter, I was 6 years old, pressed on my elbows inside the plastic tunnels of a McDonald's PlayPlace on the edge of our town. This was early 2000s suburbia, birthday banners taped to tile, the soda machine hissing, the smell of ketchup and warm fryer oil stitched into the air. It was a weeknight, already dark outside, and my parents were the only adults in the dining room, split between a cold coffee and a newspaper while I crawled through a maze I swore I could navigate with my eyes closed. If you grew up with a PlayPlace, you know those tunnels. The static shock from the plastic. The echo that turns even a whisper into a secret bouncing in circles. The clear bubble windows where you could press your face and pretend you were in a spaceship. I remember one of those windows exactly, scratched, fogged with tiny handprints, looking out over the dining room like a captain's dome. I'd climbed up to the 3rd level, feet squeaking in my socks, when I heard it, a quick, bright giggle somewhere behind me. It wasn't a sound the tunnels made. It wasn't the squeal of shoes or the thump of knees. It was a child's laugh, sharp, close, unmistakable. I twisted around, certain another kid had crawled in without me noticing. "Do you want to play?" I called, because that's what you're supposed to say when you're 6 and make a friend in a maze. No answer. Just the soft drum of rain on the roof. I inched forward, peeking around a corner where the tunnel split in two. Another giggle, further away now, like hide and seek. I grinned. Game on. I scrambled through the junction, took the left, and then the right, my palms polishing the plastic. At a 3-way, I stopped to listen. The laugh came again, above me this time, like it had climbed a level without making any sound at all. I knew every shortcut. I turned, crawled up the ribbed incline, and popped into the next level, heart thudding with that weird mix of excitement and competition only kids feel. The laugh landed directly ahead, just beyond a bend. I lunged, rounding the curve, and met a wall of silence so sudden it felt like a trick. The tunnel ahead was empty. No scuffing, no shadow, no kid pressed to the plastic to hide. I waited for the afterlaugh, the snort kids do when they can't help themselves. Nothing. The PlayPlace suddenly seemed too big and too small at the same time. The bubble window to my right looked out over the dining room. My dad glanced up, spotted me, and waved. Relief hit like a life raft. I waved back, crawled to the nearest slide, and let gravity carry me to the ground. My mom laughed, said, "Done already? You've got 5 more minutes." I shook my head hard. Nope. I didn't have the words to explain that something about the tunnels felt wrong now, like a joke I didn't understand anymore. I didn't tell them what I heard. We finished our fries, drove home, and I made myself sleep with the light on. I went back to that McDonald's 100 times after, but I only climbed the tunnels if other kids were already inside. I never wanted to be alone up there again. Years slid by. High school bled into community college. When money got tight, I took the night shift at that same McDonald's, the one by the highway with the aging PlayPlace now framed like a fish tank behind safety glass. Corporate had phased out a lot of the old structures, but ours hung on, a skeleton of bright tubes that felt smaller than I remembered and somehow creepier when the dining room was empty. On slow nights, after the last families left, we'd mop in loops while the fryers beeped at phantom orders. The PlayPlace lights dimmed automatically at 10. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the glass and flinch because it always looked like someone standing inside the tubes, waiting. It was close to midnight on a Tuesday when the laughter came back. I was pushing a mop toward the PlayPlace, thinking about a midterm and the way bleach makes your eyes sting, when a small, ringing giggle popped through the glass like a bubble. I froze so hard the mop handle thumped my shoulder. "Jennifer," I said, one of my coworkers. "Did you hear that?" She was stacking ketchup packets at the condiment bar. "Hear what?" I didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't want to put a label on it. "A kid," I tried. "Inside." She snorted. "We locked the doors 20 minutes ago, hero." I swallowed and stepped closer to the PlayPlace glass. The tubes were dim, only the emergency glow strips lit, and that somehow made every curve darker. I cupped my hands to the glass and looked up toward the third level, the exact one from my childhood, and at first I saw only my own warped face staring back. Then I heard it again. Not from the speaker system. Not from the dining room. From inside the tubes, a quick, soft laugh, the kind you make when you're terrible at hiding and delighted to be found. The mop clattered to the tile. "Marcus?" I called to the back. "You messing with the speakers?" "No speakers in the PlayPlace," he yelled over the dish machine. "You good?" Jennifer had stopped moving. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said, trying to make it a joke. Her voice wobbled. I don't know what impulse drove me, but I went to the PlayPlace door, swiped my employee key, and pushed it open. The smell that rolled out was its own memory: warm plastic, feet, dust. The first step in was enough to lift every hair on my arms. The second step made my chest tighten like a belt. I didn't climb, just stood there, staring up the hollow spiral where the tunnel rose through the levels. "Hey," I said to the nothing. To the tubes. To the memory of myself at 6. You wanna play?" Silence. And then a tap, a single, hollow tap, from somewhere above, like a hand patting the plastic once in answer. I stepped back so fast I nearly tripped. "Okay," I whispered to the doorframe. "Okay." That's when Rick came out from the back. He'd been at that store since before my childhood, the kind of guy whose apron never looked clean no matter how many times you washed it. He took one look at me, then at the open PlayPlace door, and his mouth pressed into a tired line. "You hear it, huh?" he said. "Hear what?" Jennifer demanded, catching up, defensive because jokes stopped working. Rick wiped his hands on his apron, older than both of us and infinitely calmer. "Don't worry about it. It's been around forever. Mostly at night. You leave it alone, it leaves you alone." "What is it?" I asked, the words a scratch in my throat. Rick shook his head. "We had a manager once who tried to find out. Had the whole thing inspected, checked the seams, the vent fans, all that. Nothing. No animal. No speakers. Just, sometimes there's laughing. You get used to it." He closed the PlayPlace door, swiped his key, and the lock thunked home. "Finish your side work. You're burning the clock." He walked away like he just turned off a light. Jennifer tried to laugh again, but it came out wrong. "So, a ghost?" she whispered, eyes darting to the glass. "Like, for real?" I didn't answer. I picked up the mop, found where I'd left off, and pushed a clean path across the tile that my hands didn't seem to feel. The rest of the shift was an hour stretched into a year. Every beep sounded like a hiccup of laughter. Every reflection in the PlayPlace glass looked like a small shape crouched behind mine, grinning. I asked my parents about it a week later carefully, like I was walking barefoot across broken glass. "Do you remember when I was little?" I said. "And I suddenly didn't want to play in the tunnels anymore?" My mom blinked, surprised. "Yes. You wouldn't tell us why." I didn't know how to explain that I still didn't have the words. Only the sound. Only the certainty. The PlayPlace is gone now, corporate finally remodeled. They took the tubes out, patched the wall, and turned the space into a birthday room that no one rents. The laughter stopped when the plastic left, or maybe it just found somewhere else to travel. I still work the occasional night, and when the dining room is empty and the air hums, I sometimes catch myself looking toward that wall like a habit I can't break. People ask if I believe in ghosts. I tell them I believe in echoes. I believe some places remember us, especially the parts built for joy, the slides, the windows, the games of chase that loop until the lights click off. But on the worst nights, when a storm sits over the highway and the power hiccups and the fryer beeps to no one, I remember the feeling of being 6 years old, hand pressed to scratched plastic, listening to the air behind me where a laugh should not be. And I hear it again, bright and close, and I know, without proof, without reason, someone up there still wants to play. My name is Caroline, and for almost 5 years I worked as a cashier, and later assistant manager, at a McDonald's in Florida. If you've ever worked fast food, you know how faces blur together after a while. The lunch rush, the after-school crowd, the regulars who want the same coffee every morning. But there was one customer I'll never forget. Her name, at least the one she told us, was Miss Hilda. Everyone called her Miss Hilda, though she had to be pushing 80. She was tiny, cheerful, always dressed in long, colorful dresses that brushed her ankles, and she had this wide straw hat that made her look like she was headed to church or the beach, even if it was raining. Every other Saturday, like clockwork, she came in. She'd wait patiently in line, smiling at the families, chatting with kids. And when she reached the counter, she always ordered the same thing, 2 Happy Meals with different toys. For my grandbabies, she'd tell us, winking. She never sat down to eat, never ordered anything for herself. She paid, picked up the bags, and left with that same bounce in her step. We all adored her. She remembered our names, complimented our hair, told us to stay in school, stay kind. When I got promoted from cashier to shift manager, she was the first customer to notice. She clapped her hands and said, "I told you great things were coming, sugar. Don't you forget it." And then, one day, she just stopped coming. The first Saturday without her, I didn't think much of it. People travel. People get sick. But then a month passed, too, and I realized how much I missed her little routine. I told myself I should have asked her more, maybe gotten her phone number, maybe learned her last name. But who does that with customers? She was just this bright little piece of color in our gray shifts, and suddenly she was gone. I tried not to dwell on it. Until one night. It was late, maybe 7:30 on a Saturday evening. The dining room was nearly empty, a young couple whispering over fries in the corner, and a family upstairs in the loft seating area. One of my cashiers was in the restroom, so I stepped up to cover the register. That's when I saw her. Miss Hilda. She was walking slowly between the tables, her dress as colorful as always, her straw hat tilted just so. My chest swelled with relief and joy. She's okay, I thought. She's back. I almost called her name, ready to tease her for disappearing on us. But the longer I watched, the more something felt wrong. She wasn't smiling. Her steps were careful, almost hesitant. She kept turning her head like she was drinking the room in, her eyes tracing the walls, the booths, the counter, nostalgic, but not joyful. Her skin looked pale under the fluorescent lights, and her energy, the spark that always lit her up, was gone. I slipped out from behind the register and followed her path, weaving between tables. When she rounded a corner toward the hallway that led to the restrooms, I hurried to catch up. Except, when I turned that same corner, she wasn't there. I stopped, confused. The hall was empty. Both restroom doors were closed, but there was no shuffle of shoes, no sound of a lock. I walked the hall twice, checked the bathrooms, then went upstairs, then outside to the parking lot. Nothing. I even asked the couple in the corner if they'd seen a woman in a straw hat walk by. They looked at me like I was crazy. "No one came in," the girl said. One of my cashiers caught me pacing and asked what I was doing. I told her I thought I'd seen a customer, an older lady we all knew, come inside. The cashier shook her head firmly. "Nobody's come through the doors since that family upstairs." I wanted to argue, but my throat tightened. Because deep down, I already knew. I hadn't seen Miss Hilda alive. I'd seen her ghost. The thought hit me so hard I nearly cried right there at the counter. She must have passed away during those missing months, and what I saw was her last visit, her way of saying goodbye to a place she loved. Maybe she wanted one more look at the store where she picked up Happy Meals for her grandkids. Maybe she just wanted to walk those aisles one last time. I never saw her again. Not in the dining room, not in dreams, not in any shift afterward. But even now, years later, I think about her every time I hand a Happy Meal across the counter. I wonder if her grandkids ever knew how much love she poured into that little ritual. I wonder if her family still tells stories about her bright dresses and straw hat. I regret not knowing her better. I regret not saying thank you, not telling her that she brightened our days more than most people ever could. But I also know this, on that Saturday night, when the dining room was nearly empty and the world had already forgotten her, she came back, not as a customer, but as a memory made flesh, walking the aisles one last time. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was farewell. My name is Samantha, and when this happened, I was 9 years old. My mom and I had just left a friend's house where she'd spent hours talking over coffee, while I sat bored out of my mind, counting the minutes until we could go home. It was a school night, and I remember being cranky and restless in the back seat. On the way home, my mom tried to cheer me up. "How about McDonald's?" she asked. The golden arches glowed in the distance, attached to a half-empty shopping center. I perked up instantly. For a kid, a Happy Meal could fix almost anything. We parked and walked in. The place was nearly deserted. The dining room echoed with the sound of one employee mopping the tiles, and a young woman stood behind the counter, scrolling through the register. The kitchen was visible through the pass-through, stainless steel glinting under harsh fluorescent lights. I remember the fryer baskets dripping oil and the hiss of something still cooking. My mom placed our order, leaning over the counter. I stood slightly to the side, staring past the cashier into the kitchen, just curious. That's when I saw her. A tall, rail-thin woman moved across the kitchen floor. Her hair was bright red, long, loose, and striking even in that ugly light. She wore a plain white dress that brushed against her legs as she walked. She didn't belong there. No hat, no visor, no uniform. She paused at the fryer, then turned her head slowly, until her eyes landed on me. Her face was expressionless, her gaze flat and unblinking. Something about the way she looked at me was wrong, not angry, not curious, just hollow. Like she wasn't really there. I froze, my small hands gripping the counter. For a moment, it felt like the whole restaurant went quiet, like I was the only one who could see her. I whipped my head toward my mom to point her out. But when I looked back, the woman was gone. "Mom," I whispered, tugging her sleeve. "Who's the lady with red hair?" My mom frowned. "What lady?" "The one in the kitchen. In the white dress." The cashier overheard and smiled politely. "You must mean our manager. She's got red hair. Want me to call her over?" I nodded, relieved. A second later, a woman about 30 years old came to the counter, tying her apron. She did have red hair, pulled back in a bun, but she was young, healthy, and wearing her full McDonald's uniform. She smiled tiredly at me, and my heart sank. This was not the woman I saw. "No," I insisted. "Not you. The other lady. Her hair was longer. She had a white dress." The cashier and the manager exchanged a look, half confusion, half pity. My mom gave a tight smile and tried to smooth it over. "She's got a wild imagination," she said quickly. "Sorry about that. but I didn't imagine it. We got our food and sat at a booth. My mom tried to distract me with fries, but I couldn't stop glancing at the kitchen. My heart hammered when I caught sight of her again. The same woman, standing just behind the manager, shadowing her movements. She didn't speak. She didn't eat. She just followed, always a step behind, like a reflection that had slipped loose from a mirror. I pointed again. "Mom, she's right there. She's following the red-haired lady." My mom snapped. "Samantha, enough. Stop pointing at people. It's rude." I shrank back, cheeks burning, but terror pressed against my ribs. Because this wasn't people. This was something else. I kept my eyes on my food after that, forcing myself not to look up. Every instinct told me that if I stared too long, if I acknowledged her again, she might decide to notice me back in a way I couldn't escape. We finished quickly and left. My mom didn't bring it up again, and I tried to bury it as a strange childhood memory. But the image never left me. That pale, thin face. The flat eyes. The way she mirrored the real manager, as if the two of them were bound together somehow. Years later, when I was old enough to question it, I realized something chilling. The two women did look alike, same height, same hair color, same bone structure, but one was vibrant, alive, no older than 30. The other was decades older, worn, emptied out. Like a possible future. I don't know if she was a ghost, a warning, or some imprint of the past, but I know this. I wasn't imagining it. The McDonald's has since remodeled. The kitchen looks different, the counter's been replaced, and new staff runs the place. But sometimes when I drive past at night, I glance at the windows and wonder if she's still inside, walking the line behind some other red-haired employee, waiting to be noticed by a child who doesn't yet know what it means to see the dead.